Hey y'all, I am back with lots of pages of questions still. I didn't realize there were still, 30, 40 questions left. So I'm going to do my best to answer them and maybe answer them in groups too. I thank all of you guys for being on the webinar and having this continuation. So I will do my best. My brain's a little fresher today, but still a little foggy. So just an FYI as far as that. So are you familiar with phoneme graphing mapping? Where does that fall? I would think speech to print. Phoneme graphing mapping is going from the sound to the letter. There's actually, I think, a program called that. And the problem that I had looking into a lot of these programs, they would do some delivery with speech to print to some sort of a degree, and then also do delivery of print to speech. So they would kind of mix that up. But phoneme, going from the sound to graphing mapping, is definitely going from the sounds we say to the print, but the delivery of the instruction is what is different. So the answer, I guess, is that I'm not exactly sure. If you're referring to a program or just the term or that type of thing. So Heather, I know you asked that several times, so I apologize we didn't get to it last night. I was trained in structured literacy. So far, everything you say about Ebley, that Ebley does, and a whole bunch of things she lists, is what I do. Okay, I wonder where the real difference is between what you do and what I do. Catherine, you asked a lot of great questions, and sounds like we do a lot of the same things. So yeehaw and yay. So I wouldn't know until I really know what you do or how you do it, I suppose. But if you're getting great results, you're moving your kids far and fast, keep doing that. From Catherine again, I work with dyslexic students, and it's been my experience that providing instruction on several graphing choices at once is too much of a cognitive load. I do one or two at a time. We work with a lot of dyslexic students, and we have not found that again, with the delivery of the instruction, we do, if they're middle of first grade and older, 5 or 6, once in a while 7. We don't do more than 7. Like there's 20 ways to spell shh. We aren't going to teach them all 20. We're going to teach them the top ones. But we have found that it's not a problem in the way that we deliver it and looking for those patterns. So very easy, really, for even kindergartners, which we typically do, like I said, if there's only 2, like with the we will just do 2, but typically 4, maybe 5 after they've done a few sorts. So they do a beautiful job of managing that and have no problem with the cognitive load because it's delivered in that explicit manner, looking at the patterns, and then it's applied, throughout. This reminds me of ABC Dairy, and I like to see in that Michael Bend. Yes, Michael is actually another phonographics trained person who does this type of work. So Jen, you're absolutely right. His work is very much aligns with the things that I'm talking about here. You mentioned you have moved everything to online Ebley. Does this mean the students work online as well, or is the teacher training online? Yes, no, the students do not work online. We do have apps and that type of thing, and we do have I did some free lessons during COVID, which made me realize how powerful the online instruction, even when I was teaching hundreds of kids at a time, really is. So once we get our online teacher training moved over to our new platform and our new website going and all of that, and I've been meaning to do this for 2 years now, but just nothing ever opens up to do that. I'm going to be putting some more instruction that way, but no, the instruction online is for the teacher training. So instead of a fire hose like we used to do with our 3-day teacher training in person, it's dripped to them gradually, where they're learning and then teaching an activity, and learning and teaching an activity, and then gradually releasing the teachers. Now they do have videos that they put on where I actually teach their classroom or their intervention students, and they facilitate at first. So this is kind of a gradual release actually for the teachers, but the student instruction is done with actual human teacher. We do have apps too, and I've included a link for those. So a lot of our Ebley teachers and non-Ebley teachers all over the place use the Ebley apps, and they're pretty, really effective actually. Okay. Isn't it helpful for students to combine consonants to help with segmenting? When segmenting, we always segment to the smallest, well, I shouldn't say always, because nothing in English is always, but almost always, very, very close. There's just a few exceptions where we segment to the smallest sound, like Q, we keep together, that QU, to especially help with spelling. But anyway, otherwise, segmenting to the smallest unit of sounds, because the sound is what we need to access, and we already have the sound because we're talking, but we need to be able to segment it to access the sound, to put the symbol or the picture or the spelling with that sound. So blending, we want to do more continuous blending, but when we're segmenting, we want to segment with a second in between. That's a whole nother webinar. But blending, we're always segmenting more sounds together. We do the first two and then the next one, the next one. So we do not ever, when we're actually doing teaching, separate or keep those, when we're doing our explicit instruction, we do not ever keep those consonant, blends together. We separate them to the smallest sound as far as what our mouth says. So hopefully that's helpful. I tried my first lesson today, mapping words using your method. My students who are used to OG referenced the rules and marked words as they had been trained. Should I be discouraging this? Now, reading this question kind of made my heart drop, because a lot of times people think that when they come and listen and when I'm sharing information, this is not training, you guys. I'm not teaching you really how to do it. I understand that you're going to dabble in some things, and that's, I really think, kind of part of the problem is a lot of people say, I'm going to do a little bit of this, but I'm also going to do a little bit of that. And now I'm trained in EBLI. I've had that in my last webinar, somebody said that, well, I've been trained in EBLI or doing EBLI or whatever. I'm like, have you been trained? And it's kind of like me, I guess, going with a pilot on a plane and they're showing me a few things and I'm like, I can fly a plane. It's very complex. And this is a trend, I guess, that I've seen always in education is like, we want to go, this is not how it was in nursing, where you go to a conference, you sit in on an hour-long presentation and you think, now I can go and, intubate a baby or do whatever. We would never think that. We know that this is information gathering and I'm going to look further. So that concerns me, first of all, in that whole question, and that seems to be happening. And I get that you want to go and you want to do your stuff, and there's ways that we try to help you with that. But truly, if you're an educator and you really want to teach this way, this is not a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's an entire process that teachers learn over time. And even when they have the training and all the support and all the resources and all the lessons and all the everything, it's an evolution, especially if you've taught a different way, because it's, it's a challenge. And EBLI people I know would 100% agree with that. That's the feedback that they give us too. Just like kids, switching them from guessing words or doing whatever they might be doing to actually really decoding, it's a process. It doesn't just happen like that. So I want to address that and say, please, we have training. We'd love to have you trained. We have teachers all over the country, really all over the world, that have done our training. And we provide everything, the teacher training, the student lessons, the materials you need, all of it. And that is online. So as far as your OG kids, what you're probably going to be doing is confusing them with kind of doing both things at the same time. It's kind of like putting your foot on the gas and the brake at the same time, which doesn't move them very far. So they are going to do that. We find that with our OG kids, but we know as far as with teaching EBLI, how we present it in a way where we get rid of those. And again, those are things that they've learned and they've got embedded, and it's a little bit of a process to undo that. But when they see how efficient this process is with the speech to print or the speech to print completely and that delivery of that instruction, then they really change their habits a lot quicker. So I would say to you, my dear, Avita, I think it is, Avila, maybe, please get trained in EBLI, okay? Or do the EBLI apps or give your kids something so they're really getting the instruction and decreasing that, trying to what do I want to say? Yeah, decrease what they're saying to you as far as the rules and all the things that they've been trained in before. We can certainly shift that. We do it all the time, but you've really got to know what you're doing as far as how to teach the process. Aren't there programs like Really Great Reading that don't teach syllable types and they rather flex the vowel? There's a lot of people, again, it's kind of like a lot of people in balanced literacy are saying, let's put in some phonics and do that. You do more phonics, right? There's a lot of programs that are doing the vowel flexing instead of rules. Yay, which is exciting. But also was my problem as I was going down these rabbit holes. Like, oh my gosh, look at, you're doing speech print. Oh, look at, you're not. Now you're really not. Now you are doing some more. So it was this blended thing, I think is it's progress for sure. And that's how change happens. So yay for that. But it is giving, you're giving mixed messages with that. So Really Great Reading, I don't know enough about it. I've heard good things about it, but I don't know enough I do know that they, when I was looking at, that was one that I was trying to look at, but I just couldn't look deeply enough into all of these things. There's just not enough time in the day. So I do believe in flexing of vowels is becoming much more prevalent, just like phonemic awareness, which nobody talked about phonemic awareness hardly ever anywhere, except for, they were doing Haggerty years ago. But now it's much more in everyone's awareness, and there's that evolution to it. But evolution is typically not a straight line, and it's clunky. So how's that for a great answer to a great question? Gray, not great. I mean, it was a great question and a gray answer. All right. You mentioned cognitive overload. We do a lot of that in reading instruction, I think. Is linguistic phonics better for students with lower IQs? I teach learning language disabled students and struggle to learn. Yes, Jill, absolutely. The cognitive overload is for everybody. It's for your highest readers. A lot of our kids who have really very intelligent, great memories, all that kind of, they're like, this is too much. It's too much. Obviously, to memorize the whole language, if you're doing that, that's not going to work well. But even memorizing all these rules, and when do I use the rules? When do I go on this horse? When do I go on this horse? When's the exception to the rule? How do I know? When I'm not in that controlled environment that's only using things, that follow that rule. So this, again, for your kids with the lower IQs, it's like, oh, I speak. Now I'm going to access those sounds and put these little symbols that go with them. So absolutely. And really, it helps with everybody's cognitive overload. Our K2 uses Haggerty and Phonics first. 3 to 5 doesn't use either. Third grade this year is implementing EBLI. How can we support kids in 3-5 in the area of phonics? EBLI is what I would say, Holly, because you already have it. The phonemic awareness, quite honestly, is embedded so intensely in EBLI. Segmenting and blending is almost in everything we do. Phoneme manipulation, when you flex those vowels, when we do our multi-syllable split word reading and all those kinds of things, we are constantly applying that phoneme substitution, constantly. So they're practicing it. And now, so we teach it explicitly in kindergarten, the beginning of first grade, but we're done with it after that. So you again, in that streamlined way, you don't need it in the older grades unless you're doing intervention and remediation. Almost never, okay? These kids, in the general ed classroom, the vast majority of them have got it. But if they don't, then you can do some explicit instruction in it. But the 3-5 kids, high school kids, adults, almost everybody that we see, including the parents that bring them or the teachers that we teach, really don't have a firm grasp on how our English alphabetic code works. And that's a challenge and a problem. And so they learn more, and then they get fast, just like Hannah, who was already good and great and fast reader, even fast, like me. I used to read about 300 words a minute. I test it every once in a while on this computer thing I have. And the last I tested was about 450 words a minute. I've always been a great reader and a great speller, but because of doing this process, I'm even better, which is fun. Let's see. I understand you want to target K3 for gen ed and older ed, really, but a lot of times older grade classroom teachers are like, we're not supposed to be teaching reading, they're supposed to be reading. But anyway, I digress. But with your EBLI system, are there any changes you recommend if it was remediation? We don't teach remediation in classroom instruction any differently. The skills, the concepts, this is the beauty when we do truly speech-focused first delivery of instruction. The processes are all the same. It doesn't matter if you're teaching a second grader or a 50-year-old or even a kindergartner. It doesn't matter. Some just need more repetition and, whoops, what was that? That was just my hair. More repetition and more error correction and more teacher support. So that's when we're in tier 2 and 3. That's what happens with intervention. We do give a few extra things with cognitive training and that type of thing for remediation people, but it's the same process, different lessons, because if the kids are getting in a school where they use EBLI tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, they get their EBLI instruction in tier 1. Some of them are lost. Those kids that are kind of not paying any attention and in la-la land a little bit can get that, same instruction, but we use different words. So it's not like, oh, we're just trying to memorize words or something like that, but we use the same processes of delivery, okay? So it doesn't matter. The difference is whether it's special ed or an adult or general ed. In Caterpillar, why are the kids in kindergarten not showing the 8 speech sound lines? I think I saw syllables. Yes, in EBLI, we segment multi-syllable words to the syllable level, okay, because that's easy to access and manage, and then we segment to the sound. They had their syllable lines for Caterpillar, and then they had their sound lines on there too, so it may not have been able to see it well on the picture, but you can check that out again. But yes, there were 8 sounds in there on their syllable lines. Do you do any training for other languages? I would need all the English resources, but would like to know all the strategies and the how-to, and then be able to apply it to learning French. Do you have any training in the programs available without having to purchase all the resources? No. I mean, it's a system, so I suppose you could apply it. And this is another thing that comes to light. We're always hearing, I look at the billions of dollars, billions and billions of dollars that is being dumped into education all the time, more now with COVID, right? All this dumped in, okay? And we're not really getting places. Our training, based on what is done in schools, is absolutely dirt cheap, so totally inexpensive. But we're always asked, this is very much comes up about, what are you going to give us for free? What can we have for free or that we don't? And I understand when people are paying for themselves. I don't think that teachers should have to pay to get trained in how to really teach reading any more than I think parents should have to pay to come to our reading center to get their kids taught because they didn't get what they needed in school. I think both of those things are very wrong. And so what I would say to you if you're a teacher is approach your school or the people who have all this money to help give you information that you need that's going to help you move your students. I look at our little amazing miracle making team who have been paid poverty wages always and no benefits, all right, and me who also, and especially during COVID, many times got paid nothing. And then we spend literally thousands of dollars to get information out like this webinar and all of the things that go on behind the scenes and all of our team that's getting paid to do all of this work to deliver the stuff. And people say, why do you charge? And I don't know really anybody who does a job that doesn't get paid. We do a lot of not getting paid. I find that is a trend with the speech to print people who are doing really the linguistic phonics piece. We give a lot away. We're very poor. We provide a lot with very little, and people want us to give more away for free. So if we're really going to do this work, we can't do it without getting paid or without being able to pay. We had to increase $1,000 a month just to increase our Zoom so that we could accommodate all the people that were signed up for this webinar. So as far as we can't give things any cheaper, and we certainly can't give more things free. So we have a mission, and a mission at this level requires financing, and our people deserve to be paid. One day, I've been telling them for over 20 years, one day you're going to be paid what you're worth. We aren't there yet, but we will get there, So as far as that, get our training. And if we speak with people who are doing it individually because we like to get as much as we can to everybody who really, really wants it and are really going to use it. But, that's a whole nother thing. But no, as far as the question, we don't have anything for French, but it's a process. So you could use it really with any language. What do you suggest as far as assessments to get started with a student? What do you think of the past, words their way, key phonics? There's a gazillion assessments. This is what I think about assessments. If an assessment assesses if you can actually read or if you have the skills to reading, it's going to increase with EBLI instruction. Even LLI and the running records and those kids fly levels way beyond their grade level with EBLI, even though that's not what we're teaching, but it's a book that they're reading, and if they can read, they can then read those books. So I think that it's important to do an assessment that looks under the hood and shares some about tells you information about their skills. We like word identification, reading a list of real words. There's a San Diego quick assessment, I think it's called, that's free online. We share that in our training too. We do a spelling assessment because that tells you a lot about their reading. And our handwriting thing, we do that. And also writing. Have them write a paragraph to tell you. So we look at that to look at more formative, like, oh, okay, this is telling me where some weaknesses are with them, because so much time and money are spent on assessment, which great to have an assessment, and also on comprehension. Let's have an assessment on comprehension, but that's telling us that the red light is going bing, bing, bing on this dashboard. It's not getting us under the hood to say what's causing that red light to go bonkers, right? So I don't really have, I have opinions, of course, about assessment, but if it's an assessment that's assessing if they can read, then they are going to blow it out of the water with EBLI. So, and that's also a whole nother webinar that I could talk about specifics, but not for here. How do students discover the correct spelling? It's a whole process with the whole system of EBLI that we do, and the correct spelling, we do a lot of guided. It's definitely the teacher is explicit doing the sage on the stage. The teacher is not hanging out and, in observing, without doing explicit instruction. Not forever, but at the beginning for sure, because we want to be sure accuracy, automaticity. We want to be sure that for reading, for spelling, for writing, for handwriting, for all of that. So they discover the spellings through guidance, and then that gradual release to where they're using the correct spellings as they go, almost always, or knowing how to go about, getting the right one. So that's kind of a training question too. In the sense of decodable text, I better get my glasses on for this one. For my dyslexic student, my aim is to build their confidence and literacy skills, so I stick with decodables during my lessons and practice. I want them to read rich text for pleasure over learning ally. I don't know what that means. Your thoughts? We use decodable text at the very beginning for little kids. And our kindergarten classroom teachers, some of their kids transition out of that in the middle of the year, sometimes at the end, and some don't until first grade. But we do that decodable text. We love the phonic books, and I've given you guys a link to that because they will utilize books where it has several different ways to spell A or S or J or whatever. So the kids can practice a lot of different ways and they also have some that are just one, but we like that. And also their illustrations are phenomenal and the storylines are great. So we'll use that once in a while in intervention for older kids, but we really transition. You can do Dr. Seuss books. You can do a lot of, like the Frog and Toad, the Henry and Mudge. There's all kinds of things that you can do when you're teaching in this way that is natural for them, going based on their speech, as opposed to starting with that print thing. So we don't, besides little kids, we don't use a lot of decodable text, to be perfectly honest. And what it really increases their confidence and their skills and all of that is to keep raising that bar while you're supporting them. It works really, really beautiful. Is there any room for blends and word families just for the purpose of recognizing patterns? All of the words we teach kids, not all, but we teach kids all kinds of words that have blends and words families in them. So they are recognizing the patterns. They recognize patterns without us. We point out the patterns sometimes. Sometimes they point them out to us. So we don't have to put them in a blend or a word family as far as patterns at all, because they're right there all together in a word. And we never teach anything in isolation, whether it's a single sound or a blend or an onset, a rhyme, any of that. We don't teach them in isolation. We teach them all in the context of a word. So it's kind of a non-issue with them. So no, take anything that takes, we want to teach you exactly what you need to move your kids as far as they can and as fast as they can for reading, writing, and spelling. And anything that's not that, we don't include it in EBLI training, okay? Just because I've never known any teachers that say, could you give me some more stuff to do to fill up my time? That's not the problem teachers have. They have plenty to fill up their time, and they need to streamline and free up time and move their kids far and fast. So we don't do that. When you do the sounds orally, do you start with your thumb? I start with my finger. Sometimes I have 5 sounds. If I know I have 5 sounds, I'll start with my thumb. But if I don't, I'll just go over here. But we typically start with the, depending on if and it's usually us who's touching our fingers. Sometimes the kids will do that too, but I usually start with my pointer finger. You can start with your thumb. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're going left to right and not from your student's perspective. Like if I'm doing this, or this, I'm going from, this is my right, but it's your left, okay? So you want to be sure you're going left to right for the students. When doing the sounds orally for words, do you start, I just did that one. It's very difficult to only focus on letter sounds versus both sounds and letter names when our students are given a baseline assessment. Yeah, and again, almost all of them will blow away that assessment. Usually they're not so good on sounds, better on letter names. And so they're going to learn the letter names. Again, they're going to learn them. And you can teach them in the handwriting process with EBLI anyway, but that's okay. It really is a non-issue. I'm a speech therapist and have been focusing on phonemic awareness skills. Is there a book you can recommend to help me teach phonemic awareness in a more sequenced manner? I recommend phonemic awareness be taught briefly, explicitly, in small group, with and without letters, and then applied. You're going to get so much further, so much faster when you're doing this work where it's being applied, if your kids know what's expected of them. We have a process that we do in EBLI where they start with the letters, actually, like the word is club. What are the sounds? K, ul, ub. Obviously, this is once they can blend and segment. A little different in kindergarten. What's club without the k and club without the bu? And we do it with letters. We do it with dots as placeholders. We do it with fingers as placeholders. More gradual release, and then we do it all orally. And when they can do that, I'd say 75%, and they got the idea of that process, they're going to be applying it. So they're going to be repeating this continuously through all instruction and always when they're reading and writing and spelling too. So I don't have a book because we don't, a lot of our schools too, they're doing several phonemic awareness things, and they're doing them sometimes for like years. And we always start at the sound with phonemic awareness. I've never even knew that you're supposed to start, or that a lot of people, I shouldn't say supposed to, because that's not my experience, but start at syllables or onset rhyme or any of that, or that kids, we start at the sound with 3-year-olds, even 2-year-olds. Actually, even my little 1-year-old grandsons start at the sound. We always start at the sound level because that's what you need to access. We move to syllables, but right, because when their kids are talking, they say words like, mom and dad and those kinds of things. And then when they get to the adjacent consonants, a lot of times they'll, instead of slide, they'll say side, right? They drop that adjacent consonant, and then they do multi-syllable words. So we're following the trajectory from the speech, the speaking, to reading, spelling, writing, that whole listening first, then speaking, then spelling, or then reading, then writing. So we follow that natural. This is the key, you guys. We're not doing this artificial and man-made, putting it into, that kind of goes against the natural. We start with your speech first, and then we build on that. Okay. My son is in first grade and is behind in reading. He's new to EBLI and doing well. His school is testing him on Dolch sight words and is speed-based. Oh, poor kid. Is it important for my son to know the 144 sight words? So it's important for your son to know how to read words and how to have a process that then you move quickly into your self-teaching. So this is why with EBLI, we sort, there's I say 40 to 45 sounds, because 44 sounds in English, because there's debate on that too, but it's not worth debating, I would say. But anyway, all of our sounds in English, of all of them, almost every one of them can be spelled in more than one way. Even with our kindergartners, we don't even do 20 of those. We show them how it works. With our older kids, we do, I think, 8. Because then if you know the different ways to spell, you understand that can be spelled. You understand the process. So it's not about the information, it's about the process that you have. So reading words is reading words. So do we want them to know those words that are whatever they are on the list? And there's all kinds of different lists too. Cool. But let's have them know all words, and let's have them apply them instead of in isolation. So if you have those flip card things and those flashcards and all, the kids teaching them by sound and teaching them our process, we're like, whatever words you have, because every school has whatever they have, and there are a lot of different things that they have. Cool. Do they include words? Let's use those words. Use the EBLI process with those words. So whether it's this high frequency words, the sight words, this list, that list, words that are any other words, using that same process that we teach with EBLI. And again, what you're going to do, and even sometimes I had somebody that was here that I actually taught them as far as EBLI, and they were trying to teach their nephew, and she was like, oh my gosh, wait, I thought I knew what I was talking about, but then I got myself all twisted up and I can't do this. And I'm like, thank you for that awareness. It's one thing, I can watch my daughter do gymnastics all day long, but I can't do gymnastics. That doesn't mean I can do gymnastics. So being sure, what I would say for this child too, he's in first grade. Even try the EBLI Sight Words app. Okay, it's usually, especially if they know the EBLI process, or if they've done any of the younger, Space app, or even EBLI Island, which is very beginning, but EBLI Space, they will use the process and reinforce that with them. I have a second grader from Russia. I'm over halfway there, you guys. I don't know how long this is going on, but a little while, I know. I have a second grader from Russia who's having such a hard time just learning correct pronunciation in English. Her reading is early kindergarten level. How would you approach teaching ELL via speech to print when they're still aren't pronouncing sounds accurately? Now, this is the beauty, one of the many beauties of teaching a linguistic phonics speech to print approach. Coming from speech first. She's allowed to have her accent. She doesn't have to say it the same way that we say it, as long as she understands that's the symbol that represents the sound she's saying. And an example is this. I had a gentleman many years ago come from French Canadian Canada, I guess Canada, that makes sense, the area in Canada, for training. And his name was spelled D-O-N, and it was Dawn. Now, Dawn, to us in the United States, is a girl's name, right? Dawn is not how you pronounce D-O-N. However, they don't have the sound ah in their area. They don't even have that sound. So are we going to say, well, now you're going to have the sound and speak my way? Not okay, right? No. So he does dawn, d-ah-n, and then he writes a spelling d-ah-n, and that O can be ah in things like dog. But that's not even on their list. So the beauty, too, of this going from speech first with the instruction, speech-led, I like that, or whatever. I keep forgetting what Marnie told me. But when we go for speech first, it's your speech. It's your speech. Now, sometimes in the U.S. especially, we're pretty lazy. We slur a lot of things and that type of thing. So then we say we borrowed the Queen's English, so we kind of got to go by her sounds. So that's how we deal with that. But anyway, it doesn't matter that she says it differently. I love accents. They're different. But matching that speech to their sound, it doesn't matter. Yours might be an ah, yours might be a ah, or the other way around. So they will learn fast. It's interesting because ELL students, regardless, we have a lot that are Arabic speaking, reading. We have a group of schools actually that they teach Arabic and English, and most of the kids speak Arabic as their first language. And they, Spanish, all kinds of them, move even faster, it seems, than the English speaking kids, which I find fascinating. Researchers out there, maybe we should research that. I don't understand this question. I'm sorry, Zoe. What is your position on teaching 2E? I don't know what 2E means. So you're welcome to email us about this. Mastery is the conventional stop sign for preventing repetitious teaching. But 12 hours done sounds better than the Renzilli Reese, I'm not familiar, that team, who had their gifted younger daughter teaching the dyslexic older daughter for many, many hours without effect. Zoe, you're going to have to help me out with that because I need clarification. So if you can do that, send us an email, info@ebley.com. How does this connect to the new movement for sound walls rather than word walls? Do sound walls fall into the speech to print category? I'm perplexed a little bit about the sound wall thing. I prefer it if we have to do one or the other. I definitely would prefer a sound wall. But I wonder, and how we present our sounds, what our experience is we have few kids, usually those with really severe articulation issues, are the ones where we have to talk to them about how they hold their mouth. Or if they're saying, like my niece, she said, Aunt Nora, will you teach me? I say lelo, and I know that I say it wrong. Can you help me? And literally in less than 5 minutes, we looked in the mirror. This is what your mouth looks like. This is it, and then say yes and say, yeah, we did a few words. And then she practiced yellow with that mouth thing in the mirror. She said yellow exactly the right way ever since. Not that that's always the same, but having them for those specific situations or for articulation problem children, we may have a mirror where we show them. But for the 98% of kids, do not require, that's extraneous, and it's not going to hurt them per se, but it's going to take up instructional time. It takes up a lot of wall time space, right? And there's a lot of mouths up there. And I look at all those, I'm like, this is fascinating, really, with all of those mouths doing their thing. So is it the best use of wall space? Is it the best use of instructional time? It doesn't seem to be to me. I mean, I've never taught it. So my thing is I know that we can teach the most subliterate people who have the most struggles or no literacy at all and really never talk about those mouth things. Okay. We have sound walls that we use that are different than that. They actually are the charts of our sorts so that kids, when they're like, oh, what is that spelling for J or what is that spelling for K that we use at the end? Oh, it's up there. So they see it and it has the patterns and they can actually reference it. And it's also a working document and they add to it and that kind of thing. So, I mean, is it harmful? I'm pretty sure no. Is it a sound wall preferable to a word wall? I would say yes. It's a fad and everybody likes it and a lot of, people are doing it, but it takes up a lot of things. So it is more sound-based, of course, I would say. In this way of teaching, is there a sequence to instruction? Absolutely. Absolutely. Explicit instruction is explicit instruction. And when we start with CBC, well, actually BC words, CBC words, but we move really quickly. Our kids in kindergarten, probably by week 4 or maybe 3, 4, are in CBCC and CCVC words, again, because we're going from what they already have, which is their speech. We also expose them to all writing and reading that writing in a way, call it a morning message, that we support them. And so it's not explicit instruction there, it's exposure. But when they get to the explicit instruction, they've already practiced the segmenting, the blending, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 letter spell sound, multi-syllable word reading, and then they're reading just, further skyrockets there. So yes, we do have a scope and a sequence. However, with pretty much middle of first grade, definitely second grade and above, we move right into 2, 3, and 4 letter spellings because it's still 2 or 3 or 4 sounds, and developmentally they are ready for it. But definitely there is a sequence, and it's very explicit instruction when we're delivering the instruction. It's just very quick. Okay. Do you use nonsense words for instruction as well as assessment? Not typically. If they can read words, they can read nonsense words. That's why we don't really care about the nonsense word assessment for those kindergartners, because if you can blend and blend sounds together and you know the sound of the symbol, they can be nonsense or not. Though kids, little kids, which I find interesting with the nonsense word assessment, they want to make meaning out of things. So even if they read that word, I guess when we tell them it's nonsense, but we just teach real words. Almost always. Once in a while, when we would use nonsense words, would be with older kids who have a really strong visual memory of words, and they know the letters, and they know the letters that are there, and they have a really hard time shifting that. We'll go to nonsense words, to kind of shift them out of that, into their auditory. Is it helpful to assess fluency by timing students to read a passage for a minute and tallying how many words they read correct? We do that. We do. I think that it's helpful because we can see. We compare apples to apples. We do the assessment on the same passage that we had assessed at the beginning, and then if they end it and they still have seconds left, we will move to the next higher passage. But it's very beneficial for us. Tells us their fluency, also shows what mistakes they're making in their reading. It tells us a lot about what they're doing when they're reading. Are they moving their head? Are they all kinds of things? What kind of mistakes they're making in the words they're misreading or reading? What do they do when they misread the words? There's a lot that can be gleaned from listening to somebody read aloud for a minute. So yes, we do that. We like that. RAN, Rapid Automatic Naming, is what that stands for, is used as one assessment for a dyslexic indicator. Where do I think this fits in reading instruction? It's processing speed is really what it is. Processing speed is important. Processing speed is going to impact reading and reading fluency especially, which then impacts a lot of times comprehension. So is it important? For sure. Processing speed in general is important. Training that within our instruction, we actually have that in there. A lot of people say their research, you can't improve RAN. I disagree. And researchers are out there, please. I know with our alphabet thing, I've seen it, so I know it's possible. It just doesn't have the research yet, kind of like our Ignis Semmelweis. So if anybody wants to research that, really simple process to do it, and I would love to show what happens when you do that, because we have been seeing it, again, like the hand washing for years, and it's pretty spectacular. So yeah, we want them to process. I've been told a lot of times kids with dyslexia can't read fast and they can't spell well. That has also not been my experience. So they definitely increase their reading speed to normal or above even, depending. So lots more to explore all the time. Okay, you guys, I'm getting there. We're on question 29. I think there's 40. I still am having trouble wrapping my head around how student memory issues will remember that of sounds like v. I know, Jen. They will, though. You've got to trust me on that one. You don't have time to explain all that, but I get that sometimes it's like, oh my gosh, how does this work? But it's work. And again, it's not like the windshield wiper fluid container is the car. There's all these components, and that's the same with EBLI instruction or any kind of instruction. There's lots of components, and they all work together, and they all build on each other. So when you try to pull out the windshield washer container or the tires or, whatever, the oil part, whatever, the carburetor, it's not the whole thing that's going to make, that car run. So that's why I can't explain that. How do you feel? That's always a good question. I feel like that could be a trap. About Haggerty for PA. I've seen Haggerty for PA for many, many years, more than 10, in a lot of classrooms. And what they normally do is about 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week, kindergarten, first, second, third grade. What I think about it is it's an awful lot of instructional time, and a lot of the beginning part does things that are at phonemic awareness, which means the syllable, the onset rhyme, the first sound, the rest of the word, a lot of those kinds of things, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words, and it's done whole class. So I think that phonemic awareness is important. Obviously, it's important, and that's pretty strong in the research too. However, it's the same thing. All done auditorily or, orally. And so no letters attached to it, which is what we need a phonemic awareness with, is when somebody reads my name as Nor A, they need to have that skill of phoneme segmentation to segment the word, right? And that substitution to pull out the A sound and push in the But it goes with those letters. That's why we need it, right? It's not nearly as efficient, and it takes up a lot of classroom time. And a lot of teachers, a lot of times they'll be teaching, maybe a 3 cueing program, and I'm doing Haggerty and doing all they don't see gains with their kids really much at all, because it's kind of like, now we have the carburetor hanging out here and let's make this a really great carburetor, and they're like, what are we supposed to do with it, right? So I wish that it were less. I've never seen anybody, even our most struggling readers, that need hundreds and thousands of words with that. And I also wish that